this?
Okay, today we're going to go over time blocking and specifically time blocking to hit goals and also work-life balance. We're getting ready to go into the busy season, and one of the first things to go for most of us when we start getting busy is our time blocks, especially the most important ones. So we're going to go over how to protect those time blocks today and what time blocks you need to have in your calendar, because there are some that people tend to forget. So I encourage you to have your calendar open as we're going through this. And one of the first things that I would say I would like you to put on your to-do list as far as when you get done here today is think about what your ideal work week would look like. If, in the morning, do you get up, do you go for a 1 mile walk with your dog and then get your dinner and stuff pulled out and then go to work at 9 a.m. And so whatever that looks like for you, to where if you could design that day and that week, what would it look like, right? Ideally, in an ideal world. And what we're going to try to do with our time blocks and with our goals is we're going to try to fit all that in that ideal week, right? Now, obviously, if your ideal week is I don't work at all, we have to get you there through making enough money where you don't have to, right? But it might not be attainable right away, but your ideal work week right now based on what your goals and everything are right now. So obviously one of the important things you need to know when you're time blocking is what your goals are, because you have to know, you always need to come back to that business plan and come back to those goals. So if your goal is to sell 36 homes a year, Rebecca Del Pozo will tell you that's 3 hours of lead gen a day. So you need to have that time blocked into your calendar, okay? And then you need to also think about when you're reviewing your time blocks. Once a month isn't gonna cut it, and once a week is not gonna cut it, if we're being honest. So for me, myself, I did my ideal, time blocks. And then every single Sunday night, I go in and I look at my flow of my week, because my flow can change pretty drastically from week to week, based on Rotaract events, New Leaders events, theater events, things like that. So my flow can change pretty drastically. And so what I'll look at is my flow of work. If I'm out till 9 o'clock at night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm probably going to want to make sure I'm not coming into the office until 10 or 11, so that way I make up for some of my rest and some of the stuff I need to do in my home in the mornings. So I might spend more time working from home in the mornings, those weeks where I have really heavy evenings. So I look at my flow of my week and I kind of adjust it from there, so that way I'm not overdoing it if I can help it. And then daily, I do open it up in the mornings and I look at it and I go, okay, here's what my day is and where am I going to fit in the things to meet my goals? Because my responsibilities may look a little bit different than yours, and all of ours should look different because some of us have kids, some of us have to do school drop-off, obviously things like that. School drop-off should be time blocked because we all know that takes the full time, especially if you're dropping off in front of the school. So things like that take the time. So in here, if you look at mine, I have my wake up tasks time blocked. So wake up tasks, if you look at my tasks, I've already done them for the day. But it's things like I get up, I make my breakfast, I give my cat her shots, I feed my animals. So it's all those little things that I know need to get done. I actually have that time blocked. And then once I get those done, because usually that's about the first 15 minutes, the rest of that time block is for me to enjoy my coffee in the morning and eat my breakfast and just relax, because I need me time in the morning. If I don't, it really throws me off because I know myself enough. So that's why I say that ideal week is an important first step in this process, is because you need to know yourself well enough to know how to set yourself up for that success. For me, I hit a wall usually in the afternoons. Afternoons are a tough time for me, so that's actually the best time for me to meet with clients, because I get re-energized when I'm meeting clients. That gives me the energy to get through if I'm meeting and talking to new people and everything. We're matching today. So that gives me enough energy to get through. So I try to do all my admin and stuff in the morning, because that's when I have the most energy, and anything like training and things like that I have to teach, I try to do in the mornings, because that's when I'm most energetic and I'm most productive, including my housework. I try to do my housework in the mornings and those things in the mornings, because I won't do things like dishes or housework at night. I won't do it. So I have to kind of be aware of myself. And yours very likely could be the opposite. So just do it the way that works best for you. But go in there and get that actually time blocked. So if you need time in the morning to get those things done, I have time. My dog walk is time blocked in there. I have a task every day to get my dinner pulled make sure my stuff for dinner that night is pulled out and ready. That's one of the ways that I'm able to stay where I'm not eating out or ordering a pizza every night, is because I have every morning at 8 a.m. my phone dings at me and says, hey, have you pulled this stuff out for dinner? Is the stuff for dinner ready to go? Because I meal plan for the week every Saturday morning. I meal plan, I order my groceries, I go pick up my groceries, and then I've already planned for the week. So I just know every morning I have to do that. Routines keep you from failing when you get busy. Because when you get busy, the things that you do not already have embedded in a routine will go out the window easily. Okay, so you have to implement the routines when you're not in a state of chaos, if you can. If you're in a constant state of chaos, then you need to think about how can I pull this back and time block some routines in and hold myself accountable to them. And then, so for me, I schedule a lot of my personal work, my personal lead gen, my personal reporting, trainings, things like that in the morning. And then in the afternoons, you'll see I probably have like 40 more calendars than you do. In the afternoons, that's what I leave open for coaching and for clients. So I will go in there and I leave that open for you guys. Obviously, you guys schedule the appointments with me, so I leave it open so that way you guys can. And then my evenings, obviously I put it in there as I have it, right? One of the things you'll see in my calendar is I do time block admin and catch-up tasks. And I think that's a really, really important thing. As you're thinking about like how you're gonna maintain your files for your transactions, when you have 2 transactions going at a time, it gets a little bit harder to think about where am I putting all the stuff, how am I keeping it organized. So instead of trying to do it on the fly as you're going and making phone calls and receiving emails on the fly, time block time to go and organize that email inbox and put those things in. So daily I have an admin slot as much as needed. And then also I have a weekly email inbox cleanup task that's fired for me. So that way I go in there and I make sure all my emails are organized the way they need to be, because a full email really is hard for me to manage and keep on top of. And I'm a firm believer that work expands to fill the time allowed. So if you don't have a time block and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna work, you end up working and doing that whole thing when really almost all those tasks could have been done if you had just set a timer for 15 minutes and really worked diligently to get it done during that time, because you will end up filling all the time.
Do you set a timer?
Yes, I will. Yeah. And it depends on the thing. So when I'm at home, I do I call it a 2-minute tidy in the morning and at night. And it's 2 minutes. You can do anything for 2 minutes, right? So that's like my bare minimum just to get by in my really busy season, to not let my house get into disarray. I do a 2-minute tidy in the morning and I do it at night, and I set a timer, I turn some music on, and I clean for 2 minutes. And honestly, I end up cleaning for longer most of the time, because once you get going, it's easy to get done. And then, but the thing is you're giving yourself permission to end at that time. So if I really am too tired to keep going, I've given myself permission to be done after 2 minutes. Obviously there's certain things we have to get to in our job, but make sure you're time blocking and make sure you're being diligent during that time block. On the flip side of that, make sure you're time blocking in some of those self-care things. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about today was physical health. So go in and time block your physical health. If you're someone who goes and does floor hockey, right? Make sure that you're time blocking that in. Yeah, she plays floor hockey. She's a badass. And so, so she's making sure that's time blocked in. I have volleyball time blocked in this week because I can't swim this week due to the kidney stones. So I have my volleyball time blocked in this week. I have my show at Capitol, and then I also have a date night time blocked in. So like that's like this week, my husband and I looked at our schedules and we're like, the day we both have off this week is Friday, so we are going to take some time Friday night, and it's going to be our date night. And so that's the other thing that kind of goes with that, is make sure your time block kind of matches your family. I encourage you to keep different schedules for different things. So for example, you'll see on here, anything in red is actually my leadership calendar. So it's anything to do with like training and events and leadership. So some of it's stuff that I'm not necessarily required to go to, but I like to see it on my calendar, because if I have an opening during that time, I'm going, okay, great, I can take advantage of that, right? The other one that I put in here is I have a household calendar, so that's things for my household. So if my husband has something going on, or if I have a doctor's appointment, or there's something like our rent's due or something like that, I have that on that calendar, because it's not necessarily something my admin needs to see, or is part of my schedule necessarily, but it's stuff like in our house that both my husband and I can see. And obviously my husband can see my schedule too, so he can see kind of, okay, what time is she getting home tonight, that kind of thing, so he knows whether or not to expect me, because I can't always answer my phone on the fly. And then another two I have in here is I put the YMCA fitness schedule in here, so that way I can look and see, okay, oh, actually I have an opening, you know, and I could do that class, and then I can just copy it to the other calendar, and I can just add that class to my calendar, which makes it really, really nice. So I'll just see the openings in my schedule for that. And then the other one I have in here is happy hours and meal deals, because it's so important. So the funny thing is people sometimes will be like, oh, let's go get drinks, and people will be like, oh, where's happy hour right now? And it's like, I can just pull out the calendar on my phone and be like, here's where the happy hours are, here's where the meal deals are, I know where they're at. Because I'm also trying to save money, because that's one of those things that you end up doing on the fly a lot of the time, and you don't really have an opportunity to plan it a lot of the time. So I find that this is like a really nice backup, and I used it twice last week, and it saved everybody that I went with money, because I just happened to know where the happy hour was. So that's another one that I have in there. So physical health, get that in there. The other thing to think about that I don't have time blocked, but it might be an important thing for you, is spiritual wellness. So if you're someone who needs time for devotionals, or you want to take time to pray with your family, or take time for meditation or anything like that, it might not be important to me, but it might be an important thing to you. So time block that in there and get that done. And make sure that you're setting that time aside, because I'm a firm believer you prioritize the things that are important to you, and if you take care of yourself first, it's amazing how much more you can get done in your business life. So making sure you're getting that in there. Yep. And then the other thing is time with family. So you'll see I have date night in here. I don't have kids, so it's a little bit easier for me to schedule my time in with my family, because I'm just like I just tell my husband, you get me when you get me. Just deal with it, kind of thing. But when you have kids, you do have to make a priority. You know, are you having a playtime with them, or are you going out for pedicures, or are you going to go to their soccer game? You know, things like that. Making sure that you're getting those things in there, and you're not just overlooking that part of your life. A lot of people in sales do get divorced because they're not taking care of their family life. So it's an important thing not to forget about it. And I encourage you, if you don't have that in your goal setting, add that to your goal setting. If there's a certain amount of date nights you want to do in a year or something like that, like add that to your goal setting. My husband and I just kind of gonna have like a list of like things we want to do in the year, and we just look at that, because we tend to go more towards doing more date nights and stuff during my off season, and then once we go into my on season, we know that it's going to be near impossible, so we will do it much less frequently. We will have date nights much less frequently there in that time, but in the off season we're spending a lot more time together, so we do that. The other thing to get in there is education. So every Monday I have a task that goes off on my calendar, which if you're not using Google Calendar, one of the reasons I like it is because you do have the opportunity to set up reoccurring tasks. So if you don't necessarily need to time block something, so let's say it's a task like you need to check your calendar daily, or you need to check your calendar weekly, you can just assign a task over here on the right hand side, and you can actually have it recur on a schedule. So I also have one to update my budget, I have one to do my meal plan, that kind of thing, where I don't necessarily need it time blocked, but I do need a task reminder at a certain time. So I like my calf shot, you know, things like that. You know, booking for vacations and things like that too, you'll see there on the side of mine. And then there's certain ones that only come up at certain times, but it is very, very, very helpful to have those recurring things in there. And one that comes up for me is every Monday, it says check your calendar and make sure you have 5 hours of education scheduled. Because that's my goal, my commitment to myself and to my business is I'm doing 5 hours of education a week. Especially being on the newer side of real estate, I think that's very important. Of course, I am a firm believer that you need to be committed to your education no matter where you're at in the business, but even more so being new agents, it is a very important thing, and I make sure I hit that goal time and time again. Usually that's easy for me. By the time I get to that task, usually on Mondays, I'm like, God, I already have 7 hours scheduled, geez. But if I don't, I need to either find a training to go and attend at the office, which I can always use the newsletter for every Monday. I'll look at it and see, okay, is there ones I want to go to? Or what I can use to fill in, I'll watch legal hotline videos. I will work on some of my training for my license renewal. I will do things like that will fill in those gaps when maybe there's not a lot of training offered in a certain week because it's the week of Christmas or something like that. There might not be a lot, but I still want to do that. And I can watch legal hotline videos while I'm doing dishes. I can just Chromecast it's my TV, you know what I mean?
What do you usually go through to do online CE type stuff?
Rockwell is what I use, but I didn't do any of my CE with Rockwell. I did so many continuing ed classes that I didn't need to do any of my CE through them credits, any of those 30 hours. I just have to do the 2 required classes through them because I did enough for my first renewal that I didn't need to do that. So, which I would encourage you all to do. I find that I learn a lot more in person classes and stuff than doing the online 30 hours because most of the time when you're doing that you're just trying to get through it as quickly as possible to get your license renewed. So I just encourage you to spread it out and just go to trainings that you find valuable. But set a goal. It doesn't have to be 5 hours, that just happens to be 9, but set a goal, make sure you're hitting it weekly. And then let's get to business. So business time blocking. So first off, time blocking your lead gen and follow up. If you are able to have a more consistent schedule, please do that during that time. You'll see this week I have no lead gen time blocked in here because I actually have all my free time right now. I have a new admin that started on Monday, so I'm working on training her with all of my free time. So I'm not really getting in a lot of lead gen. I am going back in there and making calls when I can, but I'm not getting in my full 2-3 hours. And make sure if it's not 3 hours, I get that. But if it's an hour a day, time block in that hour a day, get your bunker set up and really honor that time. Get your water, get your candy, whatever you need to get through it and get it done. And remember, you time blocked that time for a reason. And this seems to be the first time block that typically goes. I'm guilty of it too. But it is the time block that is most important in our business. So that's quite a shame, right? Luckily, a lot of the other things I'm still honoring, things like coaching and things like that I'm still able to make my income, still work. So next, we talked about scheduling and administrative tasks. So I just scheduled general admin time blocks where I can go through and any emails I need to respond to from Abby or Jacob, or anything like that, where I'm just going through there and I'm just responding to those things, getting those things caught up. That's what I do at that time. Networking. I do think it's important to time block in networking. It might not be a big part of your week, but every Monday I have a task that goes off that says, have you scheduled some sort of networking thing for the week? So if I don't already have a Rotaract event or a new leaders event, what I'll do, or a theater event, because I count my theater events as networking because I end up talking to a lot of people. If I don't have one of those things already scheduled, then I will specifically schedule to go get coffee with a lender or a title company rep or something like that and go and sit down and talk with them. It's good, it's healthy, it's social, it's good for you, and you will get business that way. So for me, it's just one. I usually end up doing more than one a week, but at a minimum, I do one a week. And then recruiting. If that's part of your business plan, as part of your long-term passive income, please goal set to that and time block that in. For me, networking and recruiting tend to go hand in hand because I'm doing a lot of young professional stuff. So a lot of people who are thinking about getting into real estate, right? So those tend to go hand in hand for me. But they can be separate. So maybe it's something like you want to host like a get into real estate class or something like that. You can, or go and talk at your kid's school about being a realtor, things like that. That can build your long-term passive income. Okay. When I was in Bold, we talked about our downlines and business planning for that. And the team leader over there was saying she had already earned, because I did it at the end of December last year, and she had earned almost $20,000 in passive income from her downline that year. Okay, and she'd only been the team leader for 2 years, really not that long, but she had been very diligent about adding people to her downline and being consistent about it. And that's income she didn't have to do anything for, right? So that's why we're doing that. And I'm not saying you need to go out and make people become realtors that aren't realtors. I'm just saying share that you're in the business, share the benefits of the business. And if people see that benefit too, give them the tools they need to be successful. And make sure you're coming from a place of contribution. Make sure you're not forcing someone, that you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. Try not to do that. But come from a place of contribution, answer the questions, give them resources, and be that person that you wanted for yourself when you were a new realtor. So, as far as that goes, let's go ahead and let's go around the table and let's talk about goals for some of these different time blocks and what our time blocks look like now. So you guys can see mine. Abby, would you mind talking a little bit about what your time blocks are looking like as of right now and what you maybe would like to implement out of that?
Definitely. I mean, I don't have anything listed like this, listed out because every day of mine is totally different. This week especially, I've had like 4 different kids at 4 different doctors and things coming up and people's homesick from school and stuff, so it's always different. But definitely I need to get on inserting my education, particularly the continuing ed, because I only have, I need 90 hours before my 2 years.
Well, you need
right?
30 that you get to choose, and then there's 60
Right.
that are that you have to take the certain classes.
So I need to get on that to make sure I'm not like having to binge at the end. And then the next thing is the lead gen and networking. Definitely, that's easy to let slide because you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the 2 that I definitely need to find at least a specific day or a couple days during the week that I put time in for that.
And with your constantly changing schedule, one of the things we were talking about, I think, right before you got here, is that I will look at my schedule weekly and then daily and then adjust it based on the needs of the current situation. So it doesn't look the same every week. I try as much as possible to keep certain routines the same, but sometimes things just aren't possible. And if you see yourself really heavy in the evenings one week, take the mornings off, right? Because you can't work 15 hours a day, five days a week. It's not sustainable. So maybe you don't come into the office until 10 or 11, right? Maybe you don't work till 10 or 11 that day, or maybe the kids don't get lunches made that day and they get $5 instead. Like whatever it needs to be. But yeah, schedule in that time to review that and try to give yourself some semblance of sanity as much as you can.
Just a tiny
and take care of yourself. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I don't do any of this stuff right now. So
Honesty is appreciated.
Yeah, this is all stuff I could incorporate into my life, and it's funny because like during the football season, I'm very regimented and like I have a schedule like this, but it's made for me. So I'm just kind of on it, and like I don't really think about all the time that goes into somebody making that schedule and all that. So this is kind of good for me to sit down and go like, okay, there's all these different areas of my life that I need to hit.
That I could.
Yeah, and I should be organizing myself like that. Because I get more done during the football season, like I.
And you have to.
Yeah,
you have to get more done.
So
yeah,
I gotta.
It's amazing what we do when we're forced to do something, and how productive we can be when we feel like we're forced. And I find that time blocking for myself gives me that forced nature.
Yeah.
Because my phone's telling me, okay, it's time to do your admin. Okay, it's time to do this. Because I have mine all set up on alerts, so it's telling me like, okay, it's time for this. Also, I will forget appointments and things like that if I don't put it in my phone because I have so much going on. I missed a Rotaract meeting last month that I didn't have in my calendar because I legitimately went home because I looked at my calendar on my phone and I was like, oh, thank God I get to go home. And I went home, I got my pajamas on, and Gabby texts me and is like, hey, how about it? I'm like, fucking already in bed. No, I already got in bed. And because I didn't put it in my calendar. And if it doesn't make it in my calendar, it does not happen. What about you, Julie?
I do a little bit of it, but not enough of it, and I hit and miss week to week.
Yeah.
Like 1 week I'll be super organized and planned out.
And nobody's perfect every week, right?
Yeah, and the next 2 weeks you'll see, next 2 weeks there's nothing in there because I didn't plan anything. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. So I think it's just a matter of me coming up with a standard weekly schedule and then filling in with stuff in between that.
And then adjusting it as
needed. So this is
Yeah.
what every week should look like in general, but I'll fill in these days with different
And
stuff.
then also having a time that you honor weekly to go in and look at that.
Exactly, and
Because
that's what I wasn't
sometimes
doing.
we forget to time block the actual planning part.
Right, yeah, because I have the best of
Right.
intentions,
Yes.
and then I go weeks without.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's really, really silly. So that's the main thing, I think, for me, is to weekly review and
Yes.
move things from 1 week to the next.
And honor it and make it
Yeah.
like nice in some way. So typically I do it after I do my I have like a little bit of self-care time Sunday night. So I do my weekly cleaning typically Sunday mornings if I can. Obviously open houses and stuff, it just depends.
Right.
But Sunday evenings, like late afternoon, I'm typically I'm taking a nice, really long hot shower where I'm shave my legs, I put on a face mask, I do a hair mask. Like that is like a self-care thing for me every Sunday before going into the week. And like I am usually really good about honoring that, right? So, and I really honor that. And then after that, I'm so gelled and so relaxed that I'm like, okay, here's the schedule, go over it. And it's kind of like a nice, like little pre-reward for doing something that's, you know, it's not fun to plan, you know what I mean? A lot of this stuff, I mean, it's not fun to do, but it's necessary to keep the sanity going into the busy seasons, because absolutely we will all get worse as we go into this busy season. We'll get worse at eating right, we'll get worse at working out. It is inevitable, and we're not perfect about it, but if we have some sort of system to try to catch ourselves when we are failing, then maybe we can get back to it, right? And if we have some sort of reoccurring.
I know I had 2 days last week where I didn't get home till after 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
I went from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9:30 at night.
Yep, and it's true.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I remember writing offer at like 10 o'clock at night over the phone, trying to explain the contract, like falling asleep, trying to explain the contract over the phone, because I was like, no, I want you to understand this contract before I send it to you.
right.
And like, and, you know, I had shown so many homes, and it's what happens, right? I also want to bring up another form of time blocking and scheduling so I do a much more specific form of time blocking and scheduling, because that works better for me, because I assign something and I'm like, okay, I have this job during this time. Although some people work a little bit better with a more generic time blocking schedule. So they just time block, and it's a big ass time block, and it says home time. And then there's a big ass time block, and it says work time at office, work time out of office, you know, and they just do a generic thing, and they'll fill it in based on what their needs are on the day, right? And that works a lot better for some people. And so that's okay if that's what works better for you. I do that in my head, but in here, because I have so many little things going on, this just works better for me. But I always think my mornings are my personal business time, my afternoons are for clients and coaching clients, right? So like that's in my head, that's the generic time block. And in my head, I know personally me, I'm at 9 a.m. I'm usually here at 9 a.m. in the morning, but if I have busy evenings going on, I push that back to 10 or 11, right? And I give myself that time, because I'm one of those people that's what I need. So you can keep it a little more generic and just work off of a to-do list, and that's fine, because that works better for some people to just have a generic time block and then work off of a to-do list. But make sure that it includes your goals, and that you're including home time, things like that too, and you're giving your family some of your time. Okay. And also have a schedule for your kids, have a schedule for your life, have a schedule for your business is the other one. Things that are important in your life. Obviously, if your kids aren't important, it's fine. Don't put it on there. But
I'm getting ready to be an empty nester here by this weekend.
oh yeah,
Last kid's moving out.
Oh wow.
I feel good.
Got your space back.
You have no clue.
I'm a
That's
solid
so fun.
12 years off of that.
Oh, she'll be back in 6 months, but
Suck it up.
But you 6 months of bliss.
Yeah, a
You
great
know.
6 months.
Okay, any other questions or anything as it comes to time blocking? It's not a complicated thing, but right now I think we'll turn the video off and we'll sit and let's plan out kind of like our ideal week, right? We don't need to